So what is algae? That's kind of a trick question. Algae is a pretty misunderstood and complex set of organisms. To understand it, you kind of have to understand the history. Algae, it pretty much just means seaweed in Latin. In 1753, a man named Carl Linnaeus coined the term. About 200 years later, in 1935, they began to actually try and classify algae, and the more they did it, the kind of worse it got. And we kind of sit in a spot now where we have 4 different kingdoms that the term algae applies to. So why is it not a plant? Great question. Mostly just because it lacks any real organelles, like a root system that your traditional plant would have. Cellularly, they look really similar, but on the other hand, they can also be a single-celled organism that can move freely through the water. What's interesting about algae is that they're some of the oldest living species on Earth. Their fossil record dates back to about 3 billion years ago to the Precambrian era. And at 2.4 billion years ago, a massive bloom in cyanobacteria actually shifted our atmosphere into being high in oxygen for the first time, bringing life to most of the Earth. Not only are they some of the oldest species on Earth, they're some of the most diverse in size, ranging all the way down to 0.2 to 2 microns. That's 50 cells that you could line up back to back, and it would only be the thickness of a piece of paper. And on the other end of that, you have giant kelp that are up to 147 feet tall. That's the size of a 13-story building. Like, that's pretty cool if you stop and think about it. Being so incredibly diverse, it's not surprising that it's found literally everywhere, from the side of your house to the deepest parts of the ocean, all the way up onto the tops of mountains. The snowmelt allows for pink algae to grow in the snow in the summer melt. It's literally everywhere. All of that considered, it's no surprise that their lifespan varies drastically. Some of the single-celled algae will divide maybe once a day, with some of the larger species living up to a couple of years. And how they decide to divide or reproduce varies drastically. Most single-celled will just split, whereas some of the more cellular complex species go through highly complex sexual reproduction phases. Through and through, the uses for algae are kind of endless, between being used for biofuel, food supplements, feed, and the basis for every aquatic ecosystem on the face of the earth. Sky's kind of the limit on what you can do with it.